The baby was crying. Evelyn clutched him to her chest as the door burst open. Her father stood there, his eyes full of fury. "Leave him," Mr. Whitlock growled. "Abandon that child, or you and Isaiah will live as slaves until you die." Evelyn's tears fell hot on the baby's face. Behind her, Isaiah's shadow loomed like a shield, his voice low but steady. "She won't." That moment sealed their fate, and began a love story that could only end in blood. But how had it come to this? Months earlier, Evelyn Whitlock had lived in comfort. Fine gowns, soft feather beds, and the quiet pride of being the planter's daughter. But comfort couldn't hide what grew beneath her dress, what the entire town would whisper about if they knew. Her father had discovered it first, not with shouting, but with cold disgust. "You'll be hidden," he told her, his voice sharp as a blade. "Out of sight, where no one will ask questions. And you?" He turned to Isaiah, the strongest of his field hands. A man whose back was a map of scars, whose chains rattled with every step. "You'll guard her. Keep her secret safe. Do this and I'll grant you freedom and land." To Evelyn, it was exile. To Isaiah, it was a cruel bargain hope dangled like bait before a starving man. That night, the Masters' daughter crossed the first time. The air was heavy with smoke, the floor uneven beneath her slippers. She wrapped her shawl tight, her body trembling. Isaiah was there in the shadows, silent, his eyes lowered but alive with something she could not name. He kept his distance, yet his presence filled the small wooden room. She dared not speak to him, not then. Her shame pressed too heavily on her chest. The slave quarters smelled of smoke, sweat, and earth. It was a place Evelyn Whitlock had only glimpsed from afar, and now it was to be her prison. The daughter of a wealthy landowner, hidden here like a shameful secret. Her father's words echoed in her ears, "Stay out of sight until the child is born." Evelyn sat on the rough wooden cot, her silk gown already gathering dirt from the floor. Her cheeks flushed red, her breath sharp with rage. She felt degraded, discarded. And in the corner of the room, Isaiah worked in silence. The tall, broad-shouldered man had just come from the fields, his chest bare and glistening with sweat, muscles taut from years of labor. He stoked the fire without looking at her, the flicker of flames painting shadows across the scars on his back. To Evelyn, his silence felt like judgment. To Isaiah, her presence was another chain he had not asked to bear. "You," she snapped, clutching her swollen belly. "Don't just stand there like some stone. This is your fault, too. If you had spoken up, if you had refused my father." Her voice cracked, the words collapsing under the weight of her humiliation. Isaiah's eyes finally lifted, dark and steady, but his lips stayed sealed. He had learned long ago the cost of speaking too freely. So he returned to his work, silent, controlled, waiting. Days bled into nights. Evelyn wept when the pain grew sharp, cursed her father's name, and sometimes cursed at Isaiah too, because he was there, because he seemed unshakable while her world crumbled. But still he brought her water. Still he chopped wood. Still he sat awake when she trembled at night, listening to the rats scurrying under the floorboards. Survival bound them together, though bitterness still lingered between them. One evening, as rain lashed against the roof and wind howled through the cracks, Evelyn broke again. "Do you know what it feels like?" She whispered, her voice shaking. "To be hidden away like dirt? To know your own father sees you as a mistake?" Isaiah finally spoke, his words low and even. "I've known it my whole life." The room went quiet. For the first time, Evelyn looked at him, truly looked. Not as a shadow in the corner, not as her father's servant, but as a man whose existence had been one long humiliation, yet who stood strong enough to endure it. Her anger didn't vanish. Her pain didn't fade, but necessity began to press them closer. When the storms came, he held the roof beam steady while she pressed against him, afraid the hut would collapse. When food grew scarce, he cut portions from his share, placing them silently at her side. And when her body faltered under the weight of the child, his arms caught her, steady as stone. They were not yet friends, certainly not lovers, but in that fragile, hostile silence, survival had tied their fates together. The days grew hotter, and with them, the whispers. Some of the other slaves had noticed Evelyn's presence near the quarters. A planter's daughter was not meant to walk the dirt paths or sleep under thatched roofs. Their glances carried questions, sometimes even ridicule. One afternoon, a field hand spat near her feet and muttered, "White folks only come here to remind us of chains." Evelyn's face burned red, and she turned sharply away. Before she could answer, Isaiah stepped forward. He said nothing, but the set of his shoulders, the steady glare in his eyes, was enough to silence the man. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She turned on her cot, staring at Isaiah where he sat by the door, sharpening a worn blade. His presence had shielded her, and the realization left her unsettled. "Why did you do that?" she asked quietly. Isaiah didn't look up. "Because no one lays words or hands on you while I'm here." That was the bargain. It should have ended there. But something in his voice lingered. Not duty, not fear. Something closer to dignity. The next morning, she tried something she hadn't before. She cooked. The cornbread was clumsy, the fire too hot, but when she handed him the plate, Isaiah hesitated before taking it. His rough hands brushed hers, and for the first time, Evelyn didn't recoil. She noticed the cuts across his knuckles, fresh from the cane fields. Without thinking, she fetched a rag and touched his hand. He froze unused to gentleness but didn't pull away. She dabbed the blood, her breath shallow, her eyes fixed on the scars. "You've carried more than chains," she whispered. His silence was answer enough. That night, the two of them spoke again, only this time the words spilled easier. She told him of the loneliness that haunted her even in her father's grand house, how her mother had died when she was small, leaving her with a father who cared more about appearances than love. And Isaiah slowly, carefully told her of his dream. "Freedom," he said, voice low, eyes far away. "A piece of land, just enough to work with my own hands, and no man's whip at my back. That's all." The firelight flickered across their faces. Evelyn's eyes softened. For the first time, she realized Isaiah was more than her father's bargain. He was a man with dreams, fears, and a heart that still beat strong despite everything life had stolen. In the days that followed, their exchanges grew steadier. A small smile when she handed him food. A quiet laugh when she teased his solemn silence. A shared glance when the baby inside her shifted and she gasped, and his eyes widened with something like awe. They were still two people bound by shame and chains, but the first threads of something new were weaving between them. Respect. And beneath it, the faint, dangerous spark of affection. The night was long, and the air inside the small wooden quarters was heavy with fear. Evelyn's cries echoed against the thin walls, sharp and desperate, as the pains of childbirth tore through her. Isaiah knelt beside her, steady as stone though his heart thundered in his chest. He had never delivered a child before, but there was no one else. No midwife would come. No doctor would be summoned. The birth of this child was meant to stay hidden from the world. Evelyn's face was drenched with sweat, her hair plastered to her cheeks. She clutched at Isaiah's arm, nails digging into his skin, as another wave of pain racked her body. "Don't let me die here," she gasped. "Not like this. Not in this place." Isaiah met her eyes, firm and unwavering. "You won't. Hold on. Breathe." Hours passed. And then, in the darkness before dawn, a sharp cry broke through the air. A baby's cry. Evelyn collapsed back onto the cot, sobbing in exhaustion as Isaiah lifted the tiny, squirming child into his arms. The child's skin glistened, its fists clenched, its voice small yet fierce. Isaiah had held axes, plows, and chains, but never something so fragile. His calloused hands trembled as he wrapped the baby in cloth and laid it against Evelyn's chest. Her tears ran freely as she touched the child's face. "My baby," she whispered. "My little one." But then her joy faltered. Reality struck. Her father's voice haunted her mind, the shame he had cast on her. What future could this child possibly have? Born in secrecy, hidden in shadows, unwanted by the very blood that should protect him. Her sobs deepened, turning bitter. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't raise him here. I can't give him a life worth living." Isaiah leaned close, his deep voice steady. "Don't say that. Look at him." Reluctantly, Evelyn lifted her gaze. The baby's eyes fluttered open, dark and searching. He stopped crying when Isaiah's hand brushed his cheek. The moment was small yet profound, as if the child sensed the safety of that touch. Isaiah's expression softened in a way Evelyn had never seen before. The fierce warrior, the scarred laborer, the silent sentinel, gone. In his place was a man cradling hope itself. "This child," Isaiah said quietly, "is not a curse. He's a gift. A reason to fight. A reason to live." Evelyn's tears slowed. Watching Isaiah's tenderness, she felt something inside her shift. For the first time since her exile, the crushing weight of shame began to ease. From that day on, the three of them lived as a hidden family. Evelyn nursed the baby, sang lullabies in hushed tones, and held him close through the night. Isaiah kept the fire burning, gathered food, and rocked the child when Evelyn's strength failed. The quarters that once felt like a prison began to change. Not into a home, perhaps, but into a shelter of love. They were not bound by law or blood, but in secret, in silence, they became what the world refused to let them be. A family. The baby was only a few months old when the summons came. Evelyn carried him on her hip, his tiny fingers tangled in her hair, as two of her father's men escorted her back to the big house. The walk felt endless. Every step was heavy with dread, every glance from the field hands like a whispered question. What fate waits for her now? Mr. Whitlock sat in the great hall as though on a throne. His silver cane rested against his chair, his face hard as stone. He had not visited her once during confinement. He had not come to see the child. Yet now his cold eyes lingered on the baby with a calculating stare, as if weighing the boy's existence like a liability on a ledger. "You've had your time in shame," he said at last, voice sharp as a blade. "But I will not have my bloodline dragged lower by that child." His hand sliced the air, dismissive. "Leave him in the quarters. Return to your place in this house and all will be forgotten." Evelyn's throat closed. Her son stirred restlessly, sensing her tension, and whimpered against her shoulder. She clutched him closer. "No," she whispered, then stronger. "No, father. I will not abandon him." Mr. Whitlock's jaw tightened. "You dare defy me?" "He is mine," Evelyn said, her voice breaking but unyielding. "Mine, flesh of my flesh. I will not leave him to be raised like an orphan dog. I would rather rot in the quarters forever than turn from him." Her father's fury ignited. He slammed his cane against the floor, the crack echoing through the hall like thunder. "Then so be it." He thundered. His eyes blazed, not with grief, not with shame, but with rage at her defiance. "You and your bastard, and that slave you've grown fond of, yes, I know of your whispers. Your stolen glances shall serve me until death. There will be no freedom, no land. Only chains." The words struck harder than any blow. Evelyn staggered as though the floor had fallen from beneath her. The promise that had sustained her through months of humiliation, the hope of a better life for Isaiah and their child, was torn away in an instant. Her father leaned forward, his face carved with contempt, You thought, Whitlock daughter could love, slave, and walk free? Foolish girl. You belong to me, and so does he. Until you draw your last breath. The baby began to cry, his wails filling the hall. Evelyn's tears fell hot onto his soft cheeks. In that moment she saw the truth as clearly as if it had been branded into her skin. Her father would never release them. His word was dust, his heart iron. He would rather see them broken than free. And behind her, standing silent but unbowed, Isaiah's shadow stretched across the floor like a shield. This betrayal, this prison, would not be the end of their story. It would be the spark of something far more dangerous love that dared to defy chains. The days after Mr. Whitlock's betrayal bled into one another. The promise of freedom was gone. The dream of land gone. All that remained was the hard soil of the quarters, the back-breaking labor, and the shadow of chains that stretched over every sunrise. But in the cracks of that misery, something else began to grow. Evelyn no longer looked at Isaiah as the man her father forced to keep her hidden. She saw him as the one who lifted the heavy bucket from her hands when her strength failed, the one who shielded her from her father's rage with the silent firmness of his body, the one who took her baby into his arms at night, rocking him until the cries softened into tiny breaths. And Isaiah, who had spent years with calloused hands and a guarded heart, found himself watching Evelyn with a quiet awe. She laughed rarely, but when she did, it was soft and unguarded, like water breaking through stone. He saw her clumsy attempts to cook over the small fire, her determination to keep her child clean, even with rags for cloth, her courage in the face of shame that would have broken others. They did not call it love. Not yet. But in the way she saved the best scraps of food for him, and in the way he carried the baby against his chest so she could rest, the truth began to shine. At night, when the world outside the quarters fell silent, they spoke in whispers. Evelyn confessed how lonely she had been in that grand house, a daughter admired only for what her father hoped to gain through her marriage. Isaiah told her of the dream he had carried since boyhood, not gold, not riches, just a small cabin of his own. A piece of land. A family untouched by chains. "Do you think," Evelyn asked one night, her voice trembling, "that a man like you and a woman like me could ever have such a life?" Isaiah's answer was not in words, but in the way he looked at her, steady, certain, as if she were not her father's shame, but his choice, his world. Their bond grew in the stolen moments, too small to be noticed by the overseer, too fleeting to be crushed by her father's iron hand. A shared glance across the yard. The brush of fingers when she handed him a loaf of bread. The baby giggling between them, unaware of the danger that hung over every breath. It was a forbidden tenderness, and they knew it. If her father saw even a spark of what bound them, the fire of his wrath would burn hotter than ever. But in the darkest of places, love often grows the strongest. And in that love, a dangerous idea began to take root. They could not remain prisoners forever. By now, every sunrise carried the same weight. The sound of chains, the crack of the overseer's whip, the endless cycle of labor. Yet in the quiet corners of the night, a different kind of seed had taken root. A dream, a possibility. Isaiah had carried it for years, long before Evelyn entered the quarters, long before her baby's first cry. He had heard whispers traded between weary men at the edges of the fields. Whispers of a path north through dense woods and swamps, leading to free settlements where no master's hand could ever touch them again. It was a dangerous road. Men had died on it. But for Isaiah, the thought of dying free was worth more than living forever in chains. One evening, while the baby slept in Evelyn's lap, Isaiah finally spoke. His voice was low, steady, the way a man speaks when he knows his words will change everything. "There's a way out, through the jungle. It's long, hard, But if we make it, no one will ever own us again." Evelyn's eyes widened. She clutched the child closer, shaking her head as if the very thought was betrayal. "No, if my father finds us, he will kill you. He will kill all of us. Better we endure his cruelty than see you struck down." Isaiah leaned forward, his rough hands resting over hers, his eyes burning with something she had never seen so fierce. "Evelyn, listen to me. I'd rather die with hope in my chest than live another day with chains on my back. And I will not let our son grow up learning what it means to bow. He deserves more. You deserve more." Her lips trembled. The baby stirred, and she rocked him gently, staring at the child's tiny hand gripping her finger. Fear pressed down heavy, but beneath it flickered something stronger: faith. "What if we fail?" she whispered. Isaiah's jaw tightened. "Then at least we fail as a family, together." The silence stretched between them, broken only by the baby's soft breaths. And then slowly Evelyn nodded. It was not an easy nod. It carried the weight of every beating, every insult, every shadow of fear. But in that single motion, she chose freedom over fear. From that night, their lives changed. They began to prepare in secret. Evelyn squirreled away scraps of bread, bits of dried meat. Isaiah studied the paths of the guards, the dogs, the changing of shifts. He whispered prayers under his breath as he marked the nights when the moon would hide behind storm clouds. Every glance, every hushed word, every hidden step became part of a silent pact. A family's pact. For the first time since her father's betrayal, Evelyn allowed herself to believe in a different ending. Not one written by Mr. Whitlock's iron hand, but one forged by their own courage. And so the decision was made on a stormy night. When thunder cloaked the world and the dogs slept uneasy, they would run. Run for freedom. Run for their child. Run for the life they had begun to dream of together. The night of their escape came cloaked in thunder. Rain battered the roof of the quarters. Lightning tore jagged scars across the sky. And for once, Evelyn felt grateful for the storm. Every clap of thunder would be their cover. Every flash of lightning would blind the watchman's eyes. Isaiah moved first, silent, calculated. His broad frame, long used to moving through rows of crops and forests, now carried the weight of a promise. In his arms he held the baby close, the child swaddled in rough cloth to muffle his cries. Evelyn followed, her dress heavy with mud already clinging at the hem, her heart pounding louder than the rain. "Stay close," Isaiah whispered, his hand brushing hers for just a moment. No sound, no fear, just forward. They slipped through the shadows of the plantation yard. The dogs stirred, uneasy with the storm, but the thunder drowned their growls. Lantern lights swung in the distance. Two guards, drunk and careless, huddled beneath the porch of the main house. Evelyn's breath caught as she thought she saw her father's silhouette in the window, pacing, watchful even in the dead of night. But Isaiah pulled her onward, through the back fence, across the wet fields, and into the mouth of the dark woods. Branches whipped against Evelyn's arms. Her feet sank in the mire, but she pressed on. Every stumble, every gasp, Isaiah steadied her, sometimes lifting her bodily one arm under her knees, the other cradling the baby against his chest. "Isaiah, put me down, you'll fall," she pleaded, tears mixing with the rain. His voice rumbled low. "I'll carry all three of you if I must." Behind them, a shout split the storm. A torch flared. Then another. The alarm. The chase had begun. Dogs barked now, no longer afraid of thunder. Men's voices called, harsh and urgent. Evelyn clutched the baby tighter, pressing her cheek to his damp curls, whispering lullabies through broken sobs. "Don't cry, my love, don't cry. We're almost safe." Isaiah led them deeper, feet splashing through streams, shoulders straining as he pushed fallen logs aside. The jungle wrapped around them like a living shield, thick with shadows and tangled roots. Yet the torches glowed behind, weaving through the trees. Too close. Always too close. Faster. Evelyn begged, though her lungs burned. Isaiah didn't answer. He just ran, his breath coming in deep. Ragged bursts, his eyes fixed on a horizon she couldn't see. For one fleeting moment, hope sparked. The shouts grew faint. The storm howled louder. And Isaiah, drenched and trembling, looked at her with something like a smile. "We're gonna make it," he said, almost to himself. "We're gonna—" Then the sound. Horns. Another pack of dogs. More torches, cutting off the path ahead. The storm might hide them, but her father's men were relentless. Still, Evelyn felt her heart surge not with despair, but with defiance. She had made her choice. They would run until they could run no more. For freedom. For love. For the child whose life had become their anchor. The night air smelled of rain and freedom. Evelyn could see a tiny orange glimmers through the trees, the faint smoke of campfires rising in the distance. The free settlement. For the first time, hope didn't feel like a dream. It was there, across the last stretch of dark woods. Isaiah carried the baby against his chest, Evelyn clinging close behind. Her breath came ragged, but her eyes were alive. She whispered, "We made it. We're almost there." Then came the snap of branches. Shadows rose from the underbrush like ghosts. Torches flared. Steel caught the firelight. Evelyn froze, horror breaking her voice. No. Her father's men. "Run!" Isaiah roared, shoving her forward with the baby. She stumbled, clutching her son, but her feet barely carried her before the first strike fell. Isaiah turned, bare arms catching a blade before it could reach her. Blood streaked down, but he didn't falter. He fought like a storm, grabbing one man by the collar, slamming him into a tree, tearing a weapon free. For every attacker that rushed, another fell. His strength was a wall between Evelyn and death. "Go!" he shouted again, voice breaking through the chaos. She wanted to, but her legs refused. She couldn't leave him. Couldn't watch the man who had held their child, who had carried her through nights of terror, stand alone now. Tears streamed down her face as the woods rang with steel and screams. Then came the musket crack. Isaiah staggered. His eyes widened as the fire tore through his side. For a heartbeat, the fight seemed to slow. He dropped to one knee, gripping the earth with bloodied hands, forcing himself back up. Evelyn's scream split the night. Still, he fought. Still, he shielded them. A second blow drove him down for good. This time he did not rise. His chest heaved shallow, his hand pressed to the wound, crimson pouring between his fingers. Evelyn fell to her knees beside him, the baby crying in her arms. "No, no, please, stay with me," she sobbed, her tears falling on his face. Isaiah's gaze locked on her steady, unbroken even as the light faded. His lips moved, the words hoarse but clear. "Run, keep him free." Her heart shattered. She clutched his hand, pressing it against their child's tiny body, as if that touch could bind father and son forever. But his strength slipped from her grasp, his arm falling limp. The forest seemed to go silent. Evelyn screamed into the night, a sound that tore from her very soul, raw and endless. The baby wailed with her, small cries echoing his mother's grief. Behind them, the men closed in. Rough hands tore her away from his body, prying the child from her shaking arms. She kicked, fought, clawed at the earth to stay with him, but it was useless. Isaiah lay still among the leaves, his blood soaking the ground sacrifice carved into the soil of their flight. And Evelyn, dragged back into chains, knew she would carry that moment forever. The chains were cold against her wrists. They dragged Evelyn back beneath the looming shadow of her father's house, The same white columns where she once played as a child, the same halls where she had dreamed of a gentler future. Now those walls felt like a prison. Her father stood waiting at the steps, face carved in stone. His voice carried no triumph, only command. Back where you belong. Evelyn clutched her son close, trembling as iron shackles bit into her skin. She wanted to scream at him, to curse the man who had broken his word, who had sent hunters into the night like wolves. But her voice would not rise. Grief strangled her throat. Every step back onto that land felt like betrayal to Isaiah, to the dream they had shared. She could still feel his hand slipping from hers, could still hear the last command he gave her, run, keep him free. But she had not. She had been dragged back, and he had died for nothing, or so she thought. The days turned into weeks, and Evelyn labored under her father's roof, not as daughter, but as servant. Her body bore the weight of the fields, her spirit chained by sorrow. Yet in the quiet hours when her son lay in her arms, something lived on. She would whisper to him when no one could hear. "Your father was strong," she murmured, tears slipping into the child's soft hair. "He carried us through storm and night. He gave everything, just so you might breathe free air." Her son's tiny hand would curl around her finger, and Evelyn's heart would ache with both love and loss. The father never spoke Isaiah's name again. The men who had struck him down boasted of their hunt, but Evelyn did not answer. She kept silence, holding her grief like fire in her chest, burning but unyielding. And every night, when she closed her eyes, she saw Isaiah as he had been, the rough strength in his arms, the tenderness in his gaze when he cradled their baby, the unspoken promise in his smile. Those memories became her rebellion. She could not flee. She could not fight. But she could remember. And she could pass that memory on. As the boy grew, Evelyn filled him with stories. Not of wealth or land, not of the Whitlock name, but of a man who had no freedom yet gave it to others. "Your father was braver than any soldier," she told him, voice trembling but sure. "He stood against the world with nothing but his hands, and he did it for us." The boy's eyes would widen, his small chest swelling with pride. Though he would never know Isaiah's touch, he would know his courage, his sacrifice, his love. Years later, when Evelyn looked upon her son broad-shouldered now, his jaw strong like his father's, she knew Isaiah had not died in vain. For though she remained bound, her child carried freedom in his blood. And every heartbeat, every breath of the boy who lived was Isaiah's victory.